The spot where my marriage used to live was empty. I stood in a cold garage that still smelled like motor oil and lemon polish, staring at a dark rectangle on the concrete floor. No chrome, no deep-sea green paint catching the light, no nick on the left fender I kept meaning to buff out. Just one wide, unforgiving absence. That car was not metal. It was Maria. The Saturdays she perched on the stool, sipping cinnamon coffee while I threaded a new wiring harness through the firewall. It was our long highway after her last chemo appointment. Windows down, her scarf snapping like a flag of defiance. It was the only thing in this house I knew how to keep running. And now, it is gone. Okay, if they had taken what I loved, I would take back what I paid for. Before we start, quick thing. If stories about family lines crossed and dignity reclaimed keep you listening, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. It helps more than you think, and it keeps these stories coming. I woke before the thermostat remembered to be brave. The kitchen light clicked on, revealing the mug Maria bought at a gas station somewhere in Utah. Big enough to swim in, ugly enough to love. Coffee first, then the garage, then a slow loop around the neighborhood in the '72 Chevy that knew my hands better than any prayer. The garage door rolled up, breath fogged. A thin winter sun laid a pale stripe across concrete that used to be crowded with purpose. Nothing. No curve of fender. No chrome. No smell of old gasoline nesting in fresh polish. Just a neat, empty rectangle, like a missing tooth. I checked the street. I checked the side gate. I checked the hooks where the keys should hang. Empty. I walked back inside on wooden legs, the house too quiet, the clock too loud. My phone lit. Grace, my daughter, bride-to-be. A photo of her with a florist arch popped up behind her name, all peonies and promise. I answered, "Morning." "Hey, Dad." Her voice was sugar rush bright, the kind that leaves teeth aching later. "Did you see my text?" "No." I opened messages, a single bubble from 1:13 a.m. "Don't be mad, we handled the car." I swallowed. Handled it how? She breezed ahead. "Ethan's cards were due, and we needed to lock the band before someone else booked them. It was just sitting there, Dad. We figured it would be, better used. We got a great cash offer." I stared at the window over the sink. It showed my reflection. A man who had been paying other people's bills while letting his own go soft at the edges. "Grace," I said, steady. "The Chevy is titled in my name." "Right, so we used that DMV limited power of attorney you signed years ago for emissions, remember? Ethan scanned it, filled the blanks. It looked official." I closed my eyes. That old, narrow POA. The one I'd signed to let a shop send a runner to the DMV. She'd fished it out and called it permission. "You took my car in the middle of the night. You forged authority." "It's not like that." Her brightness thinned. "It was family, for the wedding. We'll make it right after the honeymoon. You'll be so proud. You always said I wanted me to be secure. Ethan said you'd cover it, like always." My hand found the counter. I looked at the calendar. 10 days until the ceremony. Under it, a scribble from months ago in my own hand. Venue deposit, my card. An old promise, suddenly new. I stared at those words until the shape of an idea clicked into place, simple as turning a key. If they could move in the night, so could I. It would not be loud. It would not be cruel. It would be fair. And it would be done in time.
The first rule of getting something back is that you prove it was yours to begin with. The second rule is that you bring receipts like a storm cloud. The third rule? You make the clock your accomplice. I spent the afternoon building a small hurricane. In the den, I opened the file drawer that has seen me through audits, illnesses, and the long quiet after Maria. There was the title, my name, clean. There was the insurance, current. There was the maintenance log, where I wrote the kind of notes only I could translate. Left rear squeal, shoe glaze, not drum. And idle hunt, vac leak at base. I made copies. I scanned. I sent PDFs to my own email, to a fresh cloud folder Luis set up because he doesn't trust me not to drop a phone in a sink. Boise's guy will deal, Luis said on speaker, but he'll test your pain tolerance first. That's fine, I said. I know what pain costs. I've been paying it monthly for years. I laid the title page under a lamp and took a clear photo. Date, my signature. I printed it. On the back, in a black pen that didn't forgive crossing out, I wrote, "Vehicle transferred without my authorization. POA was limited and misused. Seller held no title." Then I filed the police report online. Photos attached, statement precise. Not to jail my kid, to put a number on what happened should anyone need a number to tell the truth. That night, I met Grace at a coffee shop where everything was reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. She arrived in white sneakers, hair in a glossy ponytail, cheeks pink with impatience. "Dad, please don't be dramatic." "I'm being precise," I said. I handed her a copy of the title. "This is mine." "It was going to be yours again after the wedding." "You used a limited POA meant for emissions. That's not consent, that's proximity." My voice did not rise. "You took something that mattered more than it looked." Her mouth set. Her eyes softened. "We're just trying to start right." I said, "You start right by asking, not by taking." She saw the folder in my hand and flicked her gaze away. "You're going to ruin this week, aren't you?" "No," I said. "I'm going to fix what I can and stop paying for what I can't." "It doesn't feel like love. It feels like gravity." I slept badly. The winter does things to a house. Boards mutter, pipes clear their throats. Every noise sounded like a truck engine leaving the county with something I loved under its tarp. I was up before the thermostat remembered, pen ready. On a legal pad, I wrote 3 columns: mine, theirs, shared. Halfway down the page, I wrote wedding. Below that, what exactly did I agree to? I opened my email and searched venue. There it was, 6 months old. Reservation confirmation, Ridgeview Garden Hall. Visa 0417, my card. I clicked the PDF. Cancellation schedule, full refund minus admin fee if canceled 7 or more days prior to event. I checked the calendar. 10 days. We were safe. Or rather, I was. I called Ridgeview. "I paid the deposit," I said. "I'm canceling." They verified my email and card. "Understood," the manager said. "Refund less admin fee will be issued." I hung up and breathed out. Money solved a problem without solving the problem. It made a path. I called the yard next. "I'm ready to buy back the Nova," I said. "Name your number." He named it. It had barbs in it. I did not flinch. "Deal," I said. "I'll bring a cashier's check this afternoon." Then I called my bank to set the check up. And then I called Luis to meet me with a jack and a battery booster because wholesaler yards keep cars as if they resent them. Only then did I text Grace. "A courtesy. The venue was in my name. I canceled it. You will find another or choose another way. That's the consequence of selling what wasn't yours." 3 dots. Then, "You're cruel." I looked at Maria's photo. "No," I said. "I'm precise." The cashier's check was a stiff white square that could have been a ticket or a fine, depending on who read it. At Lyons Road, the wind bit through my coat and tasted like metal. The tarp came off with a plastic scream. There she was, green like wet pine, hood dull where the wax had thinned, grill smiling like it remembered me. "The battery's dead," the yardman said, already bored. "It sat 2 days." "I've sat longer," I said, "and I still start." Luis clipped the booster like he'd been born with cables in his hands. Ready. I turned the key. A cough. A shiver. A catch. The engine found itself like a singer finding the note. I tapped the throttle and she settled into the old rhythm, a heart I could hear with my fingers on the wheel. We went inside. ID, check, signatures, stamp. Copies slid across to me like absolution. On the drive home, every stoplight gave me an audience. People turn their heads when something honest rolls by. I let them look. In the garage, I killed the ignition and listened to the tick of cooling metal like applause.
At home, I found a florist postcard on the doormat, an ad for wedding centerpieces lavish enough to feed a small city. I flipped it over and wrote notes. Rehearsal 6 p.m. Thursday, bring letter. In the kitchen, 2 emails blinked. Ridgeview's cancellation confirmation and SPD acknowledgement incident number with my statement attached. I forwarded both into a folder and sat down to write a letter to Grace. Dear Grace, you did not ask and you took. I did not ask and I gave. Both were mistakes. I have corrected mine. The car is home. The venue is canceled. You may still marry. I hope you do. With kindness, with truth, with a budget that belongs to you. I will be at the rehearsal. I will not fund the fantasy. Dad. Ethan called. I let it go to voicemail. Noise dressed up as words. Deleted. At Luis's shop, we bled the brakes and topped fluids. You keep them better than your own blood pressure, he said. My blood pressure's been busy funding other people's choices, I said. That night, Grace finally replied, We'll find another venue. You won't break us. 2 words back. Be better. I poured 2 fingers of whiskey, the only time I'd allow it as punctuation, and lifted the glass toward the garage to repairs that hold. Morning check. The garage light flicked on. The Nova waited, green paint gathering dawn like it remembered how to hold it. I stood there a minute longer than necessary, palm on the fender, letting the cool metal pull the heat out of my thoughts. When machines are right, they hum a particular kind of silence people rarely do. In the kitchen, the kettle clicked off. Emails stacked up like small verdicts. Ridgeview, refund initiated, minus the admin fee. The bank, cashier's check cleared. Insurance, policy ID confirmed after I uploaded the fresh photos. Vehicle back in insured custody. Each message was a torque spec. Precise, sufficient, no flourish. I printed what mattered and clipped it, not as a shrine but as a tool roll. Then I shut the laptop and pulled the old maintenance log toward me. Pages stained with grease, numbers in the margins, Maria's quick-looped handwriting on one sticky note still stuck to the inside cover. Idle happiness is still happiness. I don't know when she wrote it. I traced the ink with a fingertip and felt something loosen behind my ribs. At 11, Mara called. Mr. Flores, it's Mara from Ridgeview. Following up, we've notified our subcontractors. Your daughter and her fiancé were in yesterday with seating charts. They were surprised. I'm not, I said. She told them the card holder holds authority. She also reminded them that we honored the cancellation terms to the letter. For what it's worth, boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. Thank you, I said, and meant it. The call clicked off. I wrote, Mara, confirmation by phone, in the margin of my legal pad, and drew a square around it the way I do around bolts I've torqued properly. Lunch was simple. Eggs in a cast iron skillet, toast, sliced tomato salted until it shone. While I ate, I drafted a short email to sales@Classic Car Depot. Subject line, Notice re unauthorized transfer of 1972 Chevrolet Nova, VIN redacted. 3 sentences. The POA was limited and misused, the titled owner did not consent, and the vehicle has been repurchased by me from the Boise wholesaler. This message is for your compliance file. No further action requested at this time. No threats, no chest beating. I CC'd myself and dropped it into the same cloud folder Louise had bullied me into creating. Bolt marked, wrenched down. The house held its breath like it had been waiting years for me to notice the drafts. I walked it like a mechanic with a flashlight, not for dust, for leaks. a stack of envelopes on the credenza, charity mailers that found me the year Maria got sick and never let go. I pulled up each account online and toggled off the automatic monthly kindness I'd forgotten I set. Kindness ought to be chosen, not harvested. I wrote the new totals on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge. On the way to the garage, I passed the hall mirror and caught a man I recognized but hadn't been lately. Jaw less slack, eyes less apologetic. In the garage, I opened the tool chest, checked for missing sockets, none, and then did the small thing you only do when you intend to keep a car. I labeled the plastic totes properly. Carb kits, electrical, trim clips, all the things that bring order back by the handful. The side door hinges squeaked. I pulled the pins, cleaned them, dabbed grease with my thumb, tapped them back until the door swung in a straight, satisfying line. That was Maria's favorite ritual to watch, a small problem becoming a solved one in under 5 minutes. You like beginnings and endings, she used to say. It's the middle that ruins you. She wasn't wrong. I'd lived a long middle inside other people's emergencies. I sat at the bench and drafted the second note for rehearsal. Shorter than the first, same spine. I did not sermonize. I wrote like a man torquing a bolt to spec. Tight enough to hold, not enough to strip. The phone buzzed with unknown numbers. I let it. I tightened the Nova's battery terminals instead and brushed off the hold down with a wire brush until the metal blinked back at me. Then I slipped a bright steering wheel lock across the rim. Not because I was afraid of thieves, because ritual matters. You return what was taken, and then you act like you intend to keep it. Late afternoon, the neighbor kid pedaled past the open garage. "Cool car," he said. "All front teeth and winter hat." "She's a good listener," I said. "My dad says old cars are trouble." "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes trouble is what teaches you how to fix things." He nodded like I'd said something profound about video games, then rode off. The Nova caught a blade of low sun across her hood and threw it onto the ceiling in a greenish flare. It looked like a heartbeat found. At dusk, I closed the garage, set the deadbolt on the side door. Clicked it, then clicked it again just to feel the firmness of the second click. Inside, I wiped the countertop dry and left the sink empty. No whiskey, no stalling, just a house returning to a sensible idle. Sleep came without argument. Somewhere in the dark, a baseboard popped. It sounded like something settling into place. I woke with the feeling you get when a misfire clears. No fireworks, just the engine of a day running on all the cylinders it should. The house felt lighter. So did the numbers. Coffee, steam, the old mug warming my palms. I opened the banking app, found the auto-pay tab I'd trained myself not to look at, and scrolled to the line that had become a silent siphon over the past 2 years. Grace. Visa ending 11/24. Temporary. Temporary like winter. Temporary like a guest who never leaves. I tapped the toggle. It asked if I was sure. I was. The green slid to gray. The little confirmation toast popped up. Auto-pay canceled. It didn't feel like a fight. It felt like finishing a job I should have started when the oil light first flickered. Next line. A cell phone plan with an extra line I paid just for the first year. I remember the conversation. Ethan's between carriers, Grace had said, which had somehow meant I should be between my own boundaries. I removed the line. Another toast blinked confirmation. I wasn't mean about it. I texted Grace the transfer pin and the exact date the line would drop. 30 days. Not a cliff, a ramp. I took the Nova on the highway to remind myself what forward feels like. The road opened, the needle rose, the winter air came in thin and honest through the vent window. I stopped at Quinn's Auto, counter as old as my knees, bell on the door, bins full of parts sold by people who know what they're selling. "Need a steering wheel lock," I said, "and a rubber firewall grommet, 2-inch if you've got it." They did.
The man at the register glanced out at the Nova. 72? I drove her out of a mistake, I said. He nodded exactly once. That's what they're for. He rang me up and added a handful of zip ties to the bag without looking at the scanner. On the house. Every old car is a zip tie car eventually. Grace called mid-afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. She tried again immediately. I answered. "What are you trying to prove?" she said, already crying. "Ethan's parents say you're humiliating us. Do you even want to be at my wedding?" "I want to be your father. I can't be that and your financier." "That's the same thing." "It isn't. One is blood. The other is bookkeeping. Bookkeeping ends." She inhaled sharply. "We just needed help." "I've helped for a long time. Long enough that you forgot it was help."
Silence, the kind that gathers truth to itself. I didn't rescue her from it. Maria used to say I was filled with money. I let this quiet stand. "How much do you need to feel safe?" I asked finally, "if the number has to come from you and not me?" She hung up. It wasn't a victory. It was absence with potential. That evening, I drove the Nova again, out on the highway, just to feel her stretch. I stopped at a diner off Route 2, ordered a burger, black coffee, and pie. Ate slowly, savoring the taste of food I'd paid for without a single pang of guilt. The waitress called me Hun and refilled my cup without asking. When I got home, a florist's postcard waited in the mailbox, roses and crystal vases, promises of centerpieces fit for royalty. I laughed. Royalty. Grace and Ethan had been playing house like monarchs for years, building castles out of my credit. That era was over. I tacked the postcard to the fridge and wrote across it in marker, "Not my bill." At 9 o'clock, the phone rang again. This time it was Ethan. His voice was cold, clipped, and rehearsed. "You've made your point, Dennis, but you've also made enemies. Do you understand? My parents won't forget this. People talk. Spokane is small. You think this won't follow you?" I let him finish. Then I answered in the same calm tone I'd use with a supplier trying to pass off bad lumber. "Ethan, the only thing that's going to follow me is my car when I drive it. The rest is noise." He scoffed. "You'll regret this." "No," I said softly. "You will." I hung up before he could reply. The faint chime of text was from Luis. He texted a photo from his shop, someone's minivan on a lift, a brake line blown like a popped vein. "Saves are in the small stuff," he wrote. "Same at home," I replied. I turned the thermostat down and the deadbolt up. In bed, the house didn't feel like a ledger. It felt like a machine at idle, waiting for the next start.
The church smelled like wax and lilies, the kind of clean that tries to make people behave. Thursday light filtered through stained glass and laid red-blue bands over the aisle like quiet police tape. The coordinator, narrow clipboard, wider patience, snapped her fingers at bridesmaids and tried to teach groomsmen how to walk without looking like they'd lost a bet. Programs sat in neat stacks at the back. I picked one up. On the last line, in a font that thought it could keep promises, it still read, "Reception to follow at Ridgeview Garden Hall." I put the program down. Paper can't blush, but it felt like it should. Grace stood near the chancel steps in a soft dress the color of unsaid things, hair pinned, face careful. When she turned and saw me, something softened, then braced. Ethan hovered at a distance, jacket unbuttoned, posture loud. He gestured like a man conducting traffic he'd caused. "Parents," the coordinator called, bright and brittle. "Let's get our practice aisle." I walked to Grace. She slid her arm through mine. For a breath as clean as candle smoke, I felt the kid who once socked my shoulder from the Nova's passenger seat and said, "Faster, Dad, faster!" because the wind had convinced her childhood might keep up if the car did. I swallowed and set the pace. Halfway down, Ethan leaned just enough to be heard. "Slow," he said, quiet and sharp. "This isn't about you." I didn't look at him.
At the altar, I placed her hand into his. His grip was possessive, a signature written too hard. I stepped back and let the coordinator run her cues. Hold, smile, breathe, reset. When the group broke, laughter rose in relieved little bursts. Someone popped a cork they shouldn't have. A bridesmaid filmed a circle of shoes for something that would disappear in 24 hours. I drifted to a pew and let the room move around me, until Grace appeared at the end of the bench. "Dad, can we talk?" She was already steering us toward a side chapel with a painted saint I couldn't name. The air there was cooler, older. "You didn't have to cancel Ridgeview," she said, low and fast. "Do you know what that's done? We've called everywhere. We're down to a banquet hall off the highway or a VFW that smells like beer. You did that when you used a document meant for emissions to sell something titled to me. We were going to make it right after the honeymoon. Grace, you've been making it right after for 3 years. That's unfair. It's accurate." I pulled an envelope from my jacket and held it out. She didn't take it, so I set it on the ledge under the saint's sandals. "I will stand with you at the ceremony. I won't pay for things I wasn't asked about. That's not a punishment. That's a boundary." She stared at the envelope like it might buzz. "Everyone thinks you're making a point." "I am," I said, "that points have ends." Ethan's cologne arrived a second before he did. He stepped between us, smile aimed at nearby eyes. "Everything okay here?" he performed. "Fine," I said. "It would be," she said to Grace, still for the audience, "if some people remembered this is our day."
A groomsman, Ty, hovered at the edge, reading the weather. The coordinator, sensing voltage, snapped her clipboard shut and announced loudly to the empty air, "10-minute break." Ethan lowered his voice. "You can't embarrass us like this, Dennis. People are flying in. Vendors are lined up." "The vendors you lined up under my card," I said. "They're notified." He tried a smirk, didn't find one. "We'll handle it. The hall will cave once everyone shows. No one turns a bride away." I looked at the program's lie sitting on a chair, then at the stained glass saint whose painted eyes stared past the mess of us to a better story. "Some doors stay shut," I said. "That's why handles have locks." He scoffed, but the sound was thinner than he meant it to be. His parents joined, outrage chronically inflamed. His mother's voice came preloaded with tears. "After all we've done," she said, and I wondered what the list contained besides criticism and casserole. "How could you pull out at the last minute? It's cruel." "It's calendar math," I said, "and consent." The officiant approached, kind mouth, tired eyes, carrying a small binder, like he knew hearts need scripts to behave. "Friends," he said gently, "let's keep rehearsal about rehearsal. The rest isn't for this room." He was right. Rooms deserve the work they're built for. I nodded. "One practical thing," I said to Grace. "My spare key." Her eyelids flickered. For a heartbeat, she was 8 again, guilty with a cookie in her pocket. She reached for her clutch, came up empty like she knew she would, and glanced at Ethan. He hesitated. Ty didn't. "Man," Ty said quietly, and held out his hand to Ethan. "Give him the key." He tried a grin. It looked borrowed. He dug in his jacket and produced the little brass shape. When it hit my palm, something inside me that had been listing found center. I didn't make a speech. I didn't make a show. I slid the key into my pocket like it had always been there. We reset. The coordinator clapped her hands. People pretended nothing had happened because pretending is cheaper than truth. I stood in the aisle while they practiced the recessional. Ty drifted close as the coordinator assigned parking lot exit strategies. "For what it's worth," he said out of the side of his mouth, "I get it. You don't have to," I said. "Maybe I do." He squinted at the program on the seat. "They're not changing that line," he said. "They can keep whatever lines they like," I said. "The doors will keep theirs." Outside, the light had slipped to the color where cars get their own thoughts. People clustered by models. Bridesmaids adjusted hems and loyalty. The sound of laughter carried a little too hard, like everyone was working for it. Grace came to the steps and stood, wrapped in her rehearsal coat like armor. Her face was careful again. She didn't look at the envelope I'd left. She didn't mention the key. "You'll be there Saturday?" she asked, the question holding a child's shape. "I will," I said, "as your father." Not as,
No, I said, not as that. She nodded like people nod when they don't agree but can't argue math. Her eyes were shiny. For a second, something tried to bridge, then Ethan called her name like a claim. She turned and went. On my way to the lot, the coordinator intercepted me with professional brightness. Mr. Flores, quick check. The program mentions Ridgeview. Are we moving that reception line to private location? That's up to them, I said, but I won't be the one paying to print the correction. She smiled in a way that let us both be adults. Understood. The Nova started like she always does when she wants to show off. First twist, no stutter. I eased out past the church sign lettered with a verse about love bearing all things and thought, bearing is not the same as financing. Traffic was light. The winter sky tried on evening. On the seat beside me, the spare key felt heavier than brass. It felt like a decision in metal. At home, I hung the key on the hook by the door and listened for the small click that told me it was where it belonged. The house gave a version of that sound back. Drywall, duct, memory, all agreeing. I made tea instead of pouring a drink, which is a different kind of discipline. I sat at the kitchen table with the empty envelope and thought about Maria at our own rehearsal, how she'd laughed when the organist missed a cue and said, even churches miss time. She would have told me tonight I'd done enough and to sleep like a man who'd torqued to spec. Cold day, exact edges, the kind of morning Spokane makes when it wants you awake without help. My coffee agreed. At 9 sharp, the first email slid in. Ridgeview notification to associated vendors. Event canceled. CC'd to caterer, florist, AV, linen rental. Polite, bloodless, final. The florist called first. I pictured a work table crowded with damp stems, hands moving faster than voices. Mr. Flores? We had your daughter's order. 12 centerpieces, bridal bouquet, boutonnieres, the works. Ridgeview says cancellation. I can refund the deposit to the card on file or issue a credit. Refund to the card. She hesitated, then softened. I'm sorry. We see fathers, grandfathers carrying more than chairs. Sometimes saying no is the only bouquet that doesn't wilt. Thank you, I said, throat tight to my own surprise.
Caterer next. Her voice had the clipped efficiency of someone who keeps a hotline from becoming a war. I vacated the balance per Ridgeview's umbrella. Your deposit returns minus food costs already prepped. We'll eat the rest in staff meal. No one starves. Send me the breakdown, I said. It landed minutes later. Potatoes, chicken thighs, green beans, rental trays. I signed electronically and wrote paid across my own copy before filing it. Not a trophy, a record that no one owed anyone any more on that line. The AV lead called like he was already mad at me from another life. Sir, I had a string quartet contracted and a sound system blocked. My people rehearsed. The hall says it's canceled, but my contract's direct. Check your clause 11, I said. I had it open. Subcontractor reliance subject to venue authorization. That authorization is withdrawn. I'm confirming the hall's notice. A pause loaded with rusted pride. Fine, he said, and hung up. A minute later, the email arrived, grudging but compliant. I replied with 2 words, received. Thanks. It's amazing how much cleaner the world runs when you answer even the people who don't deserve it with the bare minimum decency and not a drop more. Ty knocked at 3 with a 6-pack and the look of a man who just stepped out of a room where truth lost the first round. We sat at the table. He put 1 can in front of me without asking. They're making calls like mad, he said. Ethan told everyone you pulled a power play. His mother's doing the martyr tour. Grace is, I don't know, scared? Angry? She kept saying, Dad always comes through. He glanced at me. Does he? Not anymore, I said. The words didn't hurt as much as I had feared they would. They landed like a lug nut in the palm. Weighty. Right. He picked at the label. He keeps saying if everyone just shows up at Ridgeview, the venue won't dare keep the doors shut. No one turns away a bridal party, he said. Bodies make policy. He's planning to force their hand, I said. It wasn't a question. Ty looked ashamed. He asked me to text the groomsmen at dawn Saturday. Ignore the admin glitch, Ridgeview at 4. I haven't sent it yet. I took a breath. Don't send it, I said. But if he does, remember it won't make me the villain. It'll just make the lesson public. He nodded, conflicted relief on his face. For what it's worth, I respect what you're doing. I grew up watching my mom pay for my uncle's everything. It made him smaller. I didn't get that until now. We clinked cans. The beer was bad. The truth was good. At 5, my phone displayed City, unknown. I answered. Mr. Flores, Officer Lang, following up on your online report re unauthorized transfer. I'm verifying details. Title remained in your possession. POA limited to emissions. Vehicle repurchased by you? That's right, I said. Are you seeking charges? I looked through the doorway at the sliver of green in the garage, the way the Nova's fender broke the rectangle of shadow like a promise returning. I thought of Grace's little girl hand in mine at crosswalks, of teenager Grace laughing with her head thrown back, of this week's Grace hardening herself into someone I didn't recognize. I'm not, I said. Not unless the story grows new chapters. Understood, he said. Incident remains on file. If anyone disputes ownership or if there's future misuse of that POA, call the number in your email with the case ID. We'll update. Thank you, officer. After we hung up, I wrote a single line on my pad. Law says I can, love says I won't. I underlined won't twice, not because it made me noble, but because it made me exact. Evening fell quickly. I pulled steak from the fridge, salted it like a man who believed in tomorrow, and set the cast iron to heat until it shimmered. Sear 2 minutes, flip, butter, baste, rest. Mashed potatoes beaten smooth enough to make Maria scold me for overworking them. I ate with the radio low, jazz, the kind that sounds like a carb idol tuned by ear. A final text from Grace arrived while I washed the pan. People are dropping. Ethan says you humiliated us. It wasn't a question, it was an indictment. I dried the skillet and set it back on the stove to stay seasoned. Then I typed a reply, edited it down to almost nothing, and didn't send it. Instead, I opened the back door, let the brittle night air lay its cold hand on my face. Across the alley, someone pulled a trash can over concrete. A clean, ordinary sound. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look this time. I set 3 new things in the corrections tool roll: florist refund, caterer breakdown paid, AV cancellation received. Then I shut the folder. The morning of the wedding broke gray and cold. My breath fogged in the kitchen as I poured coffee into Maria's old mug, the one with the faded rose painted on its side. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after storms, except this storm hadn't passed yet. It was just about to crash. On the counter sat the folder, thick with receipts and letters. Proof, boundaries written in ink. But today wasn't about more paper. Today was about watching what happens when a house built on borrowed bricks finally shakes. By mid-afternoon, I drove the Nova out, letting the engine growl through quiet streets. Spokane wore its winter coat. Trees bare, roofs frosted. As I passed Ridgeview Garden Hall, I slowed. The parking lot was empty. The sign out front read in block letters, "Closed for private event."
Except there was no event. No music spilling from open doors. No guests streaming in. Just silence. And the echo of promises that had evaporated with a canceled contract. I parked across the street, far enough not to be noticed, close enough to see. My daughter's friends began arriving, pulling up in borrowed dresses, heels clicking on asphalt. They stopped, confused, tugging at locked doors. One by one, they tried to call, to text. Their faces shifted from excitement to irritation, then to disbelief. At 4 o'clock, Ethan's family caravan arrived. His parents stepping out first, faces red with outrage before they even touched the handles. Grace followed in a separate car, veil draped over her shoulders like a banner of denial. I watched her try the doors, pounding once, then twice, before slumping against the glass. Even from across the street, I could see her tears starting to carve lines in her makeup. Ethan barked orders, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like a general whose troops refused to march. He tried the side door. Locked. The back entrance. Locked. The sign glared above him. Closed. I leaned back in my seat and let the Chevy idle. Engine low and steady, a drumbeat under their chaos. Guests milled in the lot, muttering, coats pulled tight against the cold. A groomsman kicked at gravel, cursing under his breath. Bridesmaids huddled together, their flowers wilting in plastic wrap. The photographer snapped a few awkward pictures before packing up, muttering something about invoices that still needed paying. Ethan's voice rose, desperate. "This is sabotage. This is someone's fault." And for once, everyone knew exactly whose fault it wasn't. Mine. At 4:30, Grace spotted me. Her eyes widened. She broke from the group and marched across the street, veil trailing behind her like a torn flag. "Dad," she gasped, voice breaking, "why are you doing this? Why would you ruin the happiest day of my life?" I rolled the window down just enough. My voice came out calm, steady, even. "I didn't ruin anything, Grace. You sold something that wasn't yours. I just stopped paying for what wasn't mine." Her lip trembled. "We would have paid you back." "Would you?" I asked quietly. "You've had years. All I ever saw was more taking." She shook her head, mascara streaking. "You don't understand. Ethan says—" I cut her off. "Ethan says a lot, but he won't be the one paying this bill. You will."
Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, I thought she might collapse. Instead, she turned and stumbled back toward the parking lot, wiping her face with trembling hands. Across the street, the shouting reached a fever pitch. Ethan's parents demanded answers. Guests were leaving in frustrated clusters. Someone called a taxi, another an Uber. What had been a carefully staged performance was unraveling in real time. At 5 o'clock, the lot was half empty. At 5:15, the florist's van pulled up, confused, driver holding an order slip. He left 5 minutes later with all the flowers still in his truck. By 5:30, only Grace, Ethan, and his parents remained, 4 figures arguing under a sky turning dark. Grace threw her bouquet on the ground, petals scattering like confetti for a party that never started. Ethan finally hurled his phone against the pavement. It shattered, small pieces skittering across the lot. His mother gasped, his father swore. Grace sank onto the curb, head in her hands. I turned the key. The Nova purred louder, steady, confident. Heads turned toward the sound as I pulled slowly into the street. Grace lifted her face, eyes locking on mine. I didn't wave, I didn't gloat. I just drove past, window down, voice carrying across the cold air. "You made your choice, Grace. So did I." The car rolled forward, swallowing the distance, leaving them behind in the fading light. That evening, I parked in my driveway, stepped inside, and set my keys on the counter. The house was warm, the light steady. I poured a glass of whiskey, lifted it toward Maria's photo. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen table like it had something to prove. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of someone else's month balanced on my back. No auto transfer siphoning paychecks, no emergency that always arrived one day before payday. Just clocks and coffee and quiet. In the garage, the Nova waited. I slid into the seat, turned the key, listened to the rumble settle into a confident hum. On the wall, a hook that used to sit empty held a small, ordinary miracle. The spare key, returned. 2 keys now, one on the hook, one in my pocket, both exactly where they should be. I took the car into town. A diner I hadn't visited in years welcomed me back like I'd only stepped out for a minute. Eggs, bacon, pancakes. I paid in cash and left the tip that made the waitress blink. Not because I was generous, because I was free. By afternoon, the phone started again. Ethan, then Grace, then unknown. I let them go. One voicemail I saved. Grace through tears. "I just wanted everything to be perfect. I didn't think it would cost me you." Maybe that's where repair begins, not in refunds or receipts, but in finally recognizing cost.
My sister Rosa fed me roast chicken that evening, her kids waving homework like flags. We argued about football, we laughed. Nobody asked for money. Back home, I stood in the garage and spoke into the quiet. We did it, Maria. We took it back. I put the folder away, not as a trophy, but as a tool I hoped not to need again. Love is given freely. Money is not. Family is earned in respect, not demanded in entitlement. Boundaries are fences that keep your soul safe. I turned off the light. 2 keys, 1 house. 1 man who remembered how to say no. The future didn't feel heavy. It felt open.